Imagine a table full of wonderfully smelling, right out of the oven, fresh breads. People with their cups filled with the best wine, laughing and enjoying sitting around the table. These tables are set in the middle of the town squares, village halls, bombed-out cities, dirt-filled ghettos, squalor-filled slums, noisy markets, busy streets, and in war zones. People of all backgrounds sitting together, billionaires with the homeless, suave high flyers with beggars. No fights or arguments, all there to share who they are. Tables getting endlessly expanded as new people join. More bread and wine for all to be filled with. When we face severe difficulties as individuals and groups, we turn to the basics of life. It is not a surprise that when everyone was told to stay home due to the COVID-19 pandemic, flowers and yeasts were sold out immediately. Suddenly, people wanted to do the very basic human thing, bake bread. Baking bread is not simply a symbol of doing something, but an activity that shows that life continues. All the kneading, proofing, more kneading, proofing, then baking, make us feel that life has a purpose. Breaking bread is the very basic human activity that brings comfort and joy. In the early church, communion was known as agape meal or love feast. People came to communion to celebrate Christ and enjoy His presence. For them, communion was a glimpse of the heavenly feasts they were to enjoy when Christ returned. We lost the sense of this joy and excitement of being at the Lord's table. We lost them because what began as a simple act of experiencing God's love, the early church, remember, called it agape, love feast, has been turned into theologically heavy doctrinal moment of understanding God's forgiveness and reconciliation through the death and resurrection of our Lord. It was not that the people of the early church did not know this. It was simply that the institutional church, through theologians, insisted that everyone had to know that the act of communion table had to be all about, and each of us having the full understanding, the true meaning in somber and grateful manner. Love as a joyful and exciting experience was left out in favor of learned silence at the table. Today we are celebrating the second Sunday of Advent. As the first Sunday of December, it is also our traditional Communion Sunday. It is time to be fed and have our thirst quenched. Bread as the symbol of food that we require needs no explanation. Perhaps this is why Jesus took bread and used it to symbolize Himself and His love. We see this best in Gospel John. He calls Himself bread multitude times. He liked to let His disciples know that He was sustaining and nourishing those who believed in Him like bread. At His Last Supper in other Gospels, He used the phrase as He broke the bread, "This is my body." Through this symbolic action, Christians from the very beginning gathered to celebrate Jesus in memory. On the first day of the week, they gathered together and shared the meal. In those early days, they actually ate together. All Christians from all backgrounds came together and shared a meal. This was a revolutionary event in Roman Empire where slaves and servants were not allowed to share at the table with their masters. However, at the table of the Lord, everyone gathered together and shared equally. Imagine the joy of people being in each other's company simply for joy of sharing a meal together. No one was excluded. Everyone was welcome because Christ, through His death and resurrection, brought everyone into this circle as part of God's new creation without hierarchy and rules.